Alright, in this project we're going to create a little quiz application. So we have this question here, which language runs in a web browser, and we have some answers, some multiple choice. We're going to go ahead and choose JavaScript and submit, and it's going to take us to the next question. What does CSS stand for? Central style sheets, cascading style sheets, cascading simple sheets, cars, SUVs, sailboats. We'll go ahead and choose cars, SUV, sailboats. And then what does HTML stand for? Hypertext markup language. And then what year was JavaScript launched, which was 1995. And you can see we answered 3 out of 4 questions correctly, and we can reload the quiz. So it's pretty simple in terms of functionality. What we'll do is create like a basic template that we can use to insert the questions and answers using a JavaScript array, and then we'll add the functionality to select an answer and check it and so on, add to the score and increment it. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's start on the HTML for our quiz. Title will say quiz app. And essentially what we're going to do is just have a placeholder, kind of a placeholder for a question. It'll be an H2. We'll give it an ID, and then we'll have a bunch of radio inputs for the answer, and those will also be placeholders. And then later on when we get to the JavaScript, we will replace the placeholders with the actual questions and answers, and we'll use that as basically as like a template for each one, and then we can have as many question answers as we want. So let's start off by just creating a quiz container, and I'm going to give this an ID of quiz, and then we'll have a class of quiz header. And inside here we'll have our question, which is going to be an H2 with an ID of question. And I'm just going to, like I said, put a placeholder here. We'll just say question text. And then under that we'll have a UL with some list items, and each list item will have a radio input, not radius, radio input with a name of answer, and then the ID is going to be A for this one. And let's see, we also want, let's do class of answer, and that should be good. Then underneath it we're going to have a label. 4 is going to match the ID of the input, which is A, and let's also give this an ID of A underscore text, because we're going to insert the question in here. We'll just say question for now. So basically we just want to copy this, and each question will have 4 answers, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we just want to change some of this stuff. So the second one, so we want the name to be answer for all of them, but the ID is going to change, so that's going to be B, and the 4 attribute on the label as well is going to be B, and then the ID here is going to be B text. And then we want to do the same here, so let's go here, here, and here, and let's change that to C, and then we'll go here, here, and here, and that's going to be D. Okay, and then we want a submit button. That's going to go outside of the header, so right here, and let's add a button. We're going to give this an ID of submit, and we'll say submit. Alright, so it doesn't look very good right now, but we're going to go ahead and add the CSS, which isn't too bad. So let's jump into our style sheet, and we're going to use the Poppins font. So I'm going to say, let's see, CSS2 question mark family, and let's set this to Poppins, and then let's do a weight, so WGHT, let's say at, and then 200 semicolon 400. I'm going to change the body font to that Poppins. Alright, so we also want a background color on the body, so let's set that. Background color is going to be hexadecimal value B8 C6 DB. Okay, and then let's add Actually, that'll be the background color. We're going to use a gradient, a linear gradient for browsers that support that. So let's use background image and set linear gradient, and we'll do 315 degrees. And the colors for this, the first one, let's do hexadecimal. Actually, it's going to be the same color here. So we want to do that at 0%, and then comma, and the next color will be F5F7FA to 100%. So it gives it just a little bit of a gradient look. And then we have our flexbox. We can get rid of flex direction column. And let's see, align items, that's good. The rest should be okay. So now the quiz container, which wraps around everything, so for that, I'm going to set the background color to white. And let's give this a border radius of 10 pixels. And let's do a box shadow. So for box shadow, we'll do 0, 0 for the offsets, 10 pixels, 2 pixels, and then RGBA. And the color will be 100. 100, 100, and then for the alpha value will be 0.1. Okay, let's set a width here as well of 600 pixels. And then I'm going to set an overflow of hidden so nothing goes out of the container. And then for the header, remember this whole part is the quiz header, and then you have the button below it. So let's say for the quiz header class, I want some padding, and we'll just do 4 rem, which is going to be 4 times whatever the root HTML elements font size is. And then for the H2, which is the question, we'll style that. Let's do padding, we'll do 1 rem. And let's do text align to the center and get rid of any margin. And then for the UL, we don't want any bullet points, so let's set list style type to none. And let's set padding to 0. Okay, now for the list items, say UILI or ULLI, and I'm going to set the font size to be a little bigger. Let's do 1.2, 1.2 rem. And then we'll set the margin on that to be 1 rem on the top and bottom, 0 on the left and right. And for the label, so ULLI label, I just want to make the cursor into a pointer. All right, so if we hover over these, we get our, our pointer. So last thing we want to style is the button. So we'll just grab button. Let's set a background color. And that's going to be 8E44AD. And then let's take away any border. So we'll set border to none. Let's also make the color of the text white. And we want to display this as a block level element. And I want it to go all the way across, so we'll set the width to 100%. And let's make the cursor into a pointer. Whoops. And for the font size, I'm going to make that 1.1 rem unit. And then let's see, for the font family, we just want to inherit, so that we use that Poppins font. And then the padding for the button is going to be 1.3 rem. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now for the hover, let's say button, and when it's in its hover state, I want to change the background color. And I'm going to change it to 732 D91 on hover. Okay, so it's just a little darker. And then want to get rid of, see this outline when it's in its focus state. I want to get rid of that. So let's say button in its focus state. Let's set the outline to none. And I'm also going to set the background color to 5E3 and 370. All right. Cool. So the CSS is done. We have basically just a template here that we're going to use, and in the next video we'll have our questions in a JavaScript array, and we want to basically replace it. We want to be able to have a correct answer for each question and check that. We want to be able to submit and load the next question, so we'll get into that next. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and make this quiz function. We just have the UI for it now. So for the quiz, for the questions and all that, it's going to go into an array, and I'm just going to paste this in because I don't want to just type all this out. And basically we have just a variable called quiz data. It's an array of objects that has a question, and it has an A, B, C, D answer, and then it also has a correct. So the correct is obviously going to be whichever one of these is correct. And we just have some simple questions here. Which language runs in a web browser? What does CSS, HTML stand for? What year is JavaScript launched? Obviously you can change this, but we're going to go ahead and go with these questions. Now let's bring in everything we need. First of all, we need the quiz itself, which wraps around everything. So let's do document.getElementById, and we're going to get the ID of quiz. Now for the answers, let's say const, and we'll call this answer Ls, so answer elements, and we want to use document.querySelectorAll because there's more than one. Remember, each of these has a class of answer, so that's what we want to get here. So let's say class of answer, and then we want the question element, so let's say const question element, and that's going to be document.getElementById, and the H2, the question, has an ID of question. Now we want all the answer IDs, so basically A text through D text. So let's say const A underscore text and set that to document.getElementById, and that's going to be A underscore text, and then I'm going to copy this down 3 more times. So this one, let's change that to B. This one and this one will change to C. This one and this one will change to D. Okay, and then finally we just need the submit button. So let's say const submit btn, and let's set that to document.getElementById, and we're going to get the ID of submit. Okay, so that's everything we need for now. We need an index of basically the question or the current quiz. I guess each one of these pages and each one of these is going to be a quiz. So let's say const, and we want the current quiz, which is going to always start at 0, right? Because it's an array, it's going to it starts at a 0 index. And actually, we're going to set this. This is going to change and be reassigned, so we want to use let here. And then let's also create a variable for the score, which obviously starts at 0. And then we're going to call load quiz, which is a function that we're going to create right now. So load quiz, we want to get the current quiz data. So let's say const current quiz data, and we'll set that to quiz data, which is the array that we have above, and then the index for this is going to be the current quiz value, so this right here, which is initially set to 0. All right, then we want to get the question element, so question L, actually that should be a lowercase l. Okay, so question element inner text, and we're going to set that to whatever the current quiz data question is, because current quiz data is one of the objects in the array, and we have a question value. So that's what we're getting here, and we're going to put it into that inner text. So if I save, we're going to see the first one here, which language runs in a web browser. If I change the current quiz to 2, we're going to see the second question. All right, I'm sorry, that would be the third. 1 would be the second question. Okay, now for the answers, remember we have a underscore text, and we're going to set the inner text, and let's set that to current quiz data dot a, because if we look in, if we look up here, each one of these has an a value. That's what we're getting here, and putting it into the a underscore text ID. We want to do the same for the other 3, so that'll be b, and this will be b text. C text will be current quiz data dot c, and then this one will be D. Now, one issue we're going to have when we add our event listener on the submit and we load the next quiz or the next question answer set, we're going to have something selected, and we want to deselect everything beforehand. So right when we load the quiz here, let's call deselect answers. And then we'll create that function down here. So deselect answers, and this is pretty simple. We already have our answers elements, which is a node list because we use query selector all, and we just want to loop through. So for each, and we'll say for each answer element, then let's set that particular answer element. We want to set the checked value equal to false, which will remove any checks or any selections. All right, now let's add an event listener. So we have our submit button. We want to add an event listener, so we want to listen for a click event, and when it's clicked, we're going to call a function. And we need to get the answer, so let's say const answer, and we'll set that to a function called get selected, and we'll put that function right up here, get selected, and I'm going to initialize answer. So I'm just going to initialize this variable and then take the answer elements and loop through. So for each answer element, then I want to check to see which one is checked. So we'll do an if statement here and just say if that particular answer element dot checked, which gives us a true or false, then let's set answer equal to the answer element dot ID. Okay, we're going to set it to whatever the ID is, and then after this for each here, we're just going to return the answer. All right, so that will get us the answer. In fact, let's test that out if we do a console log of answer. And then I'm going to go over here, open up my console. I'm going to choose C, which is obviously wrong. But you can see that it logs B. Python is C, Java is A, JavaScript is D. So we're getting not the correct answer, but we're getting the answer that's selected. So now we want to match that with the correct answer. So let's get rid of that. And we'll say if there's an answer, so if answer, then we want to check to see if the answer is equal to the correct answer, which remember is in the array, so we can use quiz data, and we want whatever the current quiz is, so we pass in that current quiz index, which starts at 0, and we want to check the correct value. So if the answer that we select is equal to that, then we know that that's correct. So we want to take the score and just increment it by 1. So just score plus plus. Okay, then we want to go on to the next quiz. So I'm basically saying each of these screens is a quiz. So we'll take the current quiz and we'll just increment it to move on to the next. Now let's check to see if the current quiz is less than the length of the array. So if it's less than the quiz data dot length, that means we're not at the end, so we want to once again call load quiz. else, so that means that we're at the end, we answered the last question, then I'm going to take the quiz element, which is just the entire wrapper, and I'm going to set the inner HTML, and let's set that to some backticks. And in here we'll put an H2 and just say you answered correctly at, and then we're going to put the score, so in here, so score slash, and then whatever the length of the quiz is, so we can get that with the array, which is quiz data, and then the length, so it'll be like, you know, 3 out of 4 or whatever, and then just put questions and end our H2. Okay, and then let's have a reload button. So right under the H2 we'll have a button, and we'll just do an inline on click here and set that to location.reload, which will just reload the page and it will start over, and we'll say reload. Oops. All right. So let's save it, let's try it out. I'm just going to reload this, and let's go ahead and select JavaScript. So what does CSS stand for? I'm going to choose the wrong answer on purpose here. HTML stand for, I'll choose the right answer. JavaScript, I'll choose the right answer and submit, and you can see I answered correctly at 3 out of 4 questions. Well, let's rephrase that. You answered 3 out of 4 questions correctly. Okay, and just to show you that the reload button works, I'm just going to choose a bunch of wrong answers here, and if I click reload, it starts the quiz over. All right, so very simple little application. Obviously you could add much more to this, and if you wanted to add more questions, all you would do is add to this array. Okay, and you could have these questions coming from some kind of database, coming from some kind of API. But that's it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.